Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now let's give a warm welcome to our main speaker, Gary G.
Hi, my name's Gary, and I'm an alcoholic. So my disease pays me a visit about 2 weeks ago. On occasion, my disease shows up, wants to see if I still want to be sober, if I, maybe I want to come back. And always, sometimes does it in my dreams, sometimes does it in my conscious, but this one was just absolutely brilliant. I'm sitting looking in the mirror, and it just dawns on me, I'm 45, and when I got sober, I was 26. And my disease says to me, if you go out, you get to be 26 again. And you get to look that good again. And it was completely convincing to me. And you get to, the thing that was so brilliant is that it was telling me how great I was going to look. And when I got sober, I don't look so great. I looked horrible. I look better now. So that keeps me here. I'm not a circuit speaker. I am not a scholar of the 12 steps. I don't know every single word of the big book. However, I have read that book and I have worked the steps, and it's saved my life and got me here. Let me tell you what it was like. I was 40 when I was born. I never wanted to be a kid. The first word out of my mouth was more. Never ate out of a kid's menu. I wasn't an alcoholic out of the bat, but I just definitely wanted more out of the bat. Food was my first thing. Never ate off a child's menu. I remember the first time I was at a Howard Johnson's, where I was with my dad on some trip, and they had pictures of the food, and they showed how much it was, and I was just trying to figure out what was the most. And that's how it started. I did not come from an alcoholic family. I come from a Jewish family. Jews are not alcoholics. We were too busy eating and going to doctors and getting prescription drugs to drink alcohol. It would have fucked up, it would have screwed up the buzz. My mom was a drug addict. We didn't look at it that way at the time. We just looked at her as someone who was just very knowledgeable about medicine. In our kitchen, we had a place where the glasses are, and then she had the prescription medicines there, and the prescription medicines definitely trumped the glasses, and we'd have hundreds and hundreds of different prescriptions. And she was a Jewish mother. She liked to diagnose and dispense medicine. And she'd either take me to the doctor, or she'd just make up stuff herself and think something's wrong with me and give it to me. And to top off being the drug addict, she was a hypochondriac, which is just, that combination is just unbelievable. And she couldn't get enough of this hypochondriasis herself, and she brought me in, and we played this game, and this was probably the beginning, it definitely was the beginning of my addictive behavior. She used to think that something was wrong with me. And she used to tell me, and we used to go to doctors to find out, and one day it's cancer, and this time it's, diabetes, and she thought something was wrong with me because I was really fat. And the funny thing is, she never took in consideration, that we had like 20 lamb chops for dinner. And so my brother was skinny, I wasn't, so she'd constantly take me to the doctors, and it was pretty brutal. I remember one time she was convinced I had, they gave me this x-ray, and they saw some shadow, and she was telling my dad, and I was listening, that I might have cancer of the kidney. And I remember looking in remember the World Book before the internet? I was looking, and it was like, cancer of the kidney, game over. And I thought I had this, and there was always something, that there was something wrong with you. And then she used to give me somewhat, she used to reward me for the behavior. We'll go to the doctor, and then I'll take you out to this, I'll take you out to that. And I got I got Ritalin as a kid. They used to give it to hyperactive kids. But what they do is it would kind of make them nauseous and slow kids down, and that's how the Ritalin apparently worked. They figured, let's give it to the fat kid, make him nauseous, maybe it'll slow him down from eating. They gave us diet pills back then. I mean, I was like 10 or 11 years old. I don't remember the age quite. And I used to take diet pills. And back then, diet pills weren't thought of as like some street drug. And they gave them to me, and they didn't have any impact on me, but I still was compelled to steal my mom's. And I take something, and I just love the concept. I remember that implicitly. I love the concept of being able to take something, and it would fix you. And I really started getting into what my mom was saying, and I want to find out what's wrong with me and fix me. Growing up in the 70s, I mean, we smoked. At 13, I started smoking pot, and at 14, we used to, have cocktail parties and drink. And in high school, we'd do some Quaaludes. But I mean, I really wasn't. Everyone was doing that. I don't think I was a drug addict at the time. There was a few signs that maybe there was something going wrong. Once I dove headfirst into a jacuzzi. That was a bad idea. One night I learned that you cannot drive, drink, and do Quaaludes all at the same time. Only you can do 2 out of the 3, maybe. And I did all 3. I ended up in someone's living room, in my car. It was I just trashed about 5 cars. I ended up about 6 inches from someone's living room, and I remember that they came, they were kind of, and they said, "Are you okay?" And I was smart enough to say no, and they pulled me out, and I passed out, and I was totally fine. And I got enough time to sober up, get to the hospital, and give me stitches, and I didn't get arrested, unbelievably. But none of this was, it sounds funny, but this wasn't really the hardcore stuff. This was just really lightweight. Where it really kicked in was, I remember my mom had cancer. She finally got something to really she finally got the thing, and from the time I was in like 1st grade to the time I was about 19, my mom had cancer, and she did have it. I mean, I don't know if you could will cancer onto yourself. I just don't know, but she did have it, and I remember it was pretty painful to have your mom have cancer, and especially when you're young. I remember she lost her breast, and for some reason that was just so traumatic that my mom lost her breast to me. It was just really freaked me out. And I remember I used to have to take care of her. She got cancer, and she lived for about 13 years after pretty well, but at the end I used to have to take care of her. And I remember when she was sick, no one was around one day, and I had to empty her colostomy bag at like 18, and it really, really hurt. And I remember when she finally died, it was really weird. None of the kids in our family, there was like 4 kids, and none of us cried. And I remember my dad saying to us, this is how shut down our family was. Everyone was really proud of you guys. You just really hung in there. And I remember I decided that I was going to never feel again. I remember I said feelings are for losers. Not that the feelings hurt, just I literally made a intellectual decision. I don't think feelings were a good idea. And you're just really, let's just be logical and literal, and let's get through our day, and let's not like get slowed down with, emotion. And coincidentally, that's when the drug addiction really kicked in. I was literally became a drug addict immediately. And how it happened for me is I wanted to be a lyricist. And I remember, it's not like you can look in the classifieds and it's, wanting someone with a sense of metaphor and good rhyming skills. And I definitely didn't have what it takes I wasn't a rainmaker to go out there and make it happen. And I wanted to be this artist, and I used to write poems about girls. And I had no car. And my brother said, if you come to work for me, I'll get you a car. And he did, and I started to work for my brother in real estate. And at the same time, I was introduced to cocaine. And I went from someone really not that motivated. All of a sudden, when I got on the cocaine, I got so compelled about work. I wanted to get organized. And I became so dynamic with my brother. I mean, I started a marketing campaign from him, and big mistake he made, I also started doing his books, and I used to write myself a check for $50 a day, and I guess it came up at one point. I did a really great job for him, but at one point I realized there were like 20 grand missing, and somehow with all that cocaine I gained 100 pounds, and I was fat, and I got busted from my brother and my whole family, and they found out I was doing cocaine. We didn't have the word cocaine addict at that point, and they said, you can never do drugs again. You got to get your shit totally together. You got to pay back every penny, and if you don't, we're going to throw you out of the house, and you're going to be completely disowned. And I got completely sober at that point, not through AA, not through anything like that. I remember I lost 90 pounds in 90 days and got my act completely together. This is sober, completely together, 90 days. I didn't have to do this 12-step thing. I didn't have to go with my feelings. I didn't have to go to a rehab. I didn't have to look into my soul. None of this stuff. I just got it together. And it lasted about an hour. It lasted a couple years, and I remember I was really hooked on running. I used to run 10 miles a day. Within 90 days, I was running 10 miles a day, and my knees went out. What a shock. And so a couple years into this incredible recovery, everyone's so proud of me, my knees went out, and I needed, I guess, a new fix, and I tried Coke again, and it was a bad idea. And the disease was so much stronger than ever been before. I ended up having, a couple $1,000 a week drug habit. I mean, I never had long addictions, but they were really powerful. I mean, it just compelled. And but my whole goal was, I really got back into work. I was super organized, and I wanted to get that all figured out. I used to do a things to do today every night, get out the Coke and figure out things to do today for the rest of my life. And I remember I used to always figure my finances, but I never put in, a line item for the drugs. So every week or two, I'd be like $4 or $5 grand behind, and I never just said, okay, I'm spending the drugs, because I literally quit every day. I remember I used to go to my dealer about 7 times a day, get a half a gram at a time, and I know, and for being a Jew, paying that much retail. And I did it for 2 reasons. Number one, I think if I would have had more, I would have done more. And number 2 is I just needed that much more to just get it together, and I was done. I quit 7 times a day, and I quit really bad every night around 3 in the morning. And this addiction got weird, and I started getting weird. And I remember, as I said, I'm in real estate, and I had this nocturnal behavior. I used to, be up for a couple days, and then I would fall asleep for like 12, 15 hours. And my girlfriend at the time worked with me in the office, and she used to call, and she started to get wind of this whole thing. She used to call me and just let the phone ring for 8 hours, and I just integrated into my dream. And I started to get sloppy, and I remember showing up to this one meeting with a client and my partner and buyers and sellers, and I just am sweating, and it won't stop, and oh man, and I spilled some drugs in a client's house, and people were starting to figure out that Gary's back on drugs again. And I never wanted to tell anyone, because I thought, I didn't know from AA, it wasn't like this now, or it certainly wasn't in my head, and I just figured if they found out, I would be disowned. No one would. I thought I'd get in trouble for trying to help myself, or trying to get. I just thought you're bad, it's over. Not like when you can get help. I think one really good sign, and I should have taken it, is going to this. I had one dealer and saw her 7 times a day, and I went to her house one day it was like there the 7th or 8th time, and she said, "My ex-husband used to be in AA because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and she didn't see it in herself, and she goes, I think you might have a problem." And she gave me a big book. That's one of the 2 most proud moments I have in AA in terms of my credentials. I had this drug dealer, very, very fine drug dealer. She probably had a couple hundred clients, and she had one big book, and she gave it to me. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what AA was. It didn't register. But she gave me the big book. But so people started to figure out what was going on, and my brother here, right there, told my parents that Gary's back on drugs, and then talked to my partner, my girlfriend, and they went and found out, and they decided to perform an intervention on myself. And at the same time, I had friends. I remember I went out to dinner with a friend, and he said, "You got to quit. You're going to die." And I go, "I'm going to Hawaii. And I got 8 days, and I'll just chill out. When I get back, I'll look into this." But he started telling me about rehabs. I didn't know from rehabs either. And he goes, "I had a friend that went there. It was really great." And finally that night, he convinced me I'd do it. So I went home and pulled out the yellow pages and got a couple grams and started making phone calls and tooting up and inquiring with these fine drug rehabs about, their facilities. And I was like, I didn't know. I just said, "Do you have a pool? What kind of food do you have? I've got I got a business, and, can you do weekends?" And I remember I was such a snob at the time, and I remember I saw this one, and it said like cabanas and private pool and this and that, and because I knew stars went to rehabs, and I wanted to go to the one where the stars went. And I read this whole thing, and then at the bottom it said "Se habla español," and I called them, and it was just crazy. It was just ridiculous. And the reality is I didn't understand my insurance. I was too stoned to figure out how to get into a rehab. And the next morning, I had my parents, unbeknownst to me, they intervened on me, and my dad gets me in the morning, which happened to be about 3 in the afternoon, and he got me out of bed and said, "There's some people in the living room want to talk to you." And there was my girlfriend at the time, and my partner, and my parents, and my best friend. And my dad says to me, he goes, "We don't want to watch you kill yourself, and we're going to give you 2 choices. Either you go to a rehab, or none of us will ever talk to you again." And he had been, and he got like really trained on what to say, and he was like really focused. And I said, "Great, I'm ready to go." And he said, "I don't want any lip from you." I said, he just went, and I said, "I'm ready to go." And I didn't know what to expect. Keep in mind, I didn't know what AA was. I think I had some vision of overcoats and parking lots and old men. And so they take me there, and on the way there, I get really nervous. And my mom, I remember, she said, "Gary, it'll be fabulous, and you'll lose weight." And she thought it was like going to I was going to be going to like some spa. And I remember they bring me up into the room, and they sit me down, and then they go and someone takes me to some room, and there's like a guy lying in bed, like just jonesing on heroin, and just looks and says, "I'm not supposed to have a roommate." And I just freaked out, and I ran back, and there were like all these heroin addicts there, and I'm like, I'm in the wrong place. I'm not that bad. I'm just, I thought, I don't know, I thought heroin was a whole different thing. And there was a lady that saved my life at that moment. One of the nurses came up, and she put my arm around me, and she goes, "Let's go in a room and talk." And she goes, and she sits me down, and she just had a feel, and she was on the program, but she was a nurse there. And she said the smartest thing. She goes, so she asked, I guess, to assess what you do. She goes, so how much coke did you do? And I said, well, I did 3 or 4 grams a day. And she goes, wow. I go, why? Is that a lot? She goes, that's a lot. And I'm starting, oh, really? And then she said, and did you do anything else? Oh, yeah. Did you drink? Yeah. How much did you drink? Well, like a half a bottle, 3/4 of a bottle a day. Really? With all that? Oh, wow. Is that a lot? Yeah, that's a lot. And she's like, has this look in my eyes like she's impressed. And as the assessment goes on, she's like really just so honored to be, inputting me. And the reality, what she did, and I didn't realize at the time, is I think it's one of the great geniuses of AA. We all come here so full of shame. And the stuff that got us here that was the most shameful becomes like our credentials. It's the truth. I mean, if you can get here just barely alive, you're a rock star. And I was there, and there were these people that they're heroin addicts and what have you. And I remember I finally said to her, I go, where do I rank here? Am I like in the average? Am I high? Am I low? She goes, I know. She goes, you're right up there at the top, and I'm feeling good. This is probably the first time in 5 years that I had accomplished something. I went through that rehab. I learned about the book. I remember the first time I saw the steps. We walked into the kitchen, and the steps and I knew nothing about it. And I started reading the steps. It was the first day I was there, walking in for a snack, and it said, that you were powerless over alcohol. Came to believe that you were powerless over alcohol. And I go, power. And I looked at the word powerless, and I said, how lame. You're powerless. And then you think that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. And I'm looking at this, okay, this is what you guys got going here. A, you want us to admit that we're screwed. And then B, you want to think that we have no shot of handling it ourselves. And I was like, I wanted to be out of there right then and there. Because that was against everything I had ever heard about in my life. That I was told that I could do it. I remember they were talking about, about people who can still, the atheists and agnostics, and, there were atheists that didn't believe in God, and agnostics don't believe it can be proved. And I believed in God. I just thought he was really busy and couldn't deal with this stuff. He thought we were supposed to handle this ourselves. So when I read that, I was really at a hard time that first 30 days, believing in this higher power thing. And I did use in the rehab, and they frown upon that. But I did it in the middle, and I left. And I remember when I left, I think I got in. I think I got there a little bit before I was ready to leave, because I remember I had this conversation with the medical director, and I was trying to convince him. I was saying, if I leave here and like the day or I get out here, I like do coke one more time and then quit forever. Would that be like a good thing? And he'd go, no, that wouldn't be a good thing. And I keep on I turned it around. I finally had him where he would say the words, I guess that would be okay if you never used again. And I asked him like 20 times, and I went out and used. And I just had to hear it from him. And at that time, I had a company, I had a girlfriend, I had a car. I was just a middle-aged, a guy, 25, with a drug addiction. The next 6 weeks, I turned into a psychotic. And not like your friend says, oh, he's a psychotic. I'm talking about there's files, there's charts in places with my name, and it says psychotic. My disease got very weird. I started getting completely out there. And I remember 6 weeks later, I couldn't get high. I had no money. The drugs didn't work anymore. Nothing worked anymore. And I went back to that rehab and proceeded to have a nervous breakdown, and ended up spending 2 to 3 weeks, and I don't remember how much, in the lock ward of a mental hospital with the nickname The Weird Guy. And And it was pretty bad. And then I went back to the rehab, and then they just finally, they didn't know what to do with me. And the guy says, and I was paying him $500 a day. He goes, "We can't help you. You got to go. You need some long-term mental hospital. We can't handle you." And they diagnosed me with being manic depressive and bipolar, and they didn't take into account maybe the massive amounts of cocaine and downers might have played a role in that behavior. And I ran out of that place, and I had no place to go, and I called someone who I knew from AA, and I had him take me to a meeting, and I was whacked. And I was out of my mind. My parents saw me, my family saw me. I was out of my mind. And I went to go stay back with my girlfriend, and she was just abusing the hell out of me. And I remember going to the park, and I was willing now. Now I was willing. I wasn't playing games. The mental hospital, that was pretty bad for me. A little embarrassing. So I went to the park, and I brought the big book. And I don't know much about the big book, but I knew there was the third step, and someone told me that there's this third step prayer, and you could be restored to sanity. That step made sense. Now, I mean, I was insane. 1 and 2 made all the sense in the world now. And I needed to be restored to sanity because I was literally insane. And I read that third step prayer, and then it says you can improvise. I don't remember the exact words, but you can kind of have your own prayer to God. And I remember waddling around the park. I was wearing about 270, the only fat cocaine addict ever. And I had a conversation with God, and I go, "I don't necessarily know if I believe you or believe in you or anything, but I'm insane. Help me." And I did this little prayer, and I didn't know it, and I didn't feel it. But later that day, I see my older brother, and he said, "You've changed." He goes, "Yesterday, we were talking with our family, and we thought you were one of those people that just would never come back. You were out of your mind. You were insane. You had that look in your eyes, and now you're sane." And I was. So I had one of those overwhelming experiences. There was no bolt of light, but it happened immediately for me. And I was still very scared. In fact, I spent the first 9 months on lithium, which is this salts for bipolar. And finally, I realized that maybe it was the drugs that had me bipolar. So after 9 months, I got rid of that. But, went to meetings every day for about 3 years. And I remember doing my first inventory, and it was really about what was going on right then and there. I had so much resentment and so much anger and so many things about right then and there. That's all I dealt with at the time. And but it was still pretty powerful. And I remember doing my amends, and everyone was like, "Cool, fine." I mean, I guess I really hurt myself a lot. But in terms of, and I remember I passed 6 and 7 just. I didn't even know how to deal with those. I couldn't even understand it. They said, like, get rid of your character flaws for the most part, and I wasn't really ready to do that because I didn't know what would be left. So I waited a while for those. One of the cool things about my story is, and I think there's a good message for here from some people who have been around for a while. The first 5 years were unbelievable. It was just I grew. I mean, when you're coming from that low, it's easy to grow. I mean, I got my driver's license, I remember, like the first month in sobriety, and, my life was twice as good as it was before that. It's so easy to achieve things when you're, I think people in this room, have to accomplish more than most people they do in their life just to get to zero. I mean, we come down the road. So, lost my train of thought. This is your brain on drugs. First 5 years was unbelievable. And then I completely digressed for like 5 or 6 years. And there were some reasons. I mean, I had a slow thyroid that I didn't know about, and I was just ended up, trying to, medicate myself with Diet Coke. And, but I finally had 5 years where nothing happened, and I just really realized in that time where if you're not growing, you're totally digressing. And I found myself 10 years sober. I remember it was, about 10, 11 years sober, and I felt like the program wasn't working for me. I wasn't working at this time. I was going to a program, I was going to a meeting once a year if I needed it or not. I was taking no chances, and my life became really, really small. And I remember I got some medicine for my thyroid problem, but I also took a look at everything. And I got a new sponsor who's here, and I did a new inventory. And when I did this inventory, I've done a lot of inventories in this program. And I find that every time you do an inventory, it opens you up to find out how screwed up you really are. And that first one was just like, it was just taken off the top layer. And I probably got more out of that one 5 years ago. And I found out certain things. Like one of the things I found out is that I was walking around with this belief that something was wrong with me because my mom told me. And I was also walking around with the belief that I couldn't support myself because my dad used to say that. He said, marry a rich girl because you're never going to make it on your money, on your brains. And it sunk in. So I was walking around with beliefs that weren't even mine. And I was able to write that down in an inventory and let it go. And in the last 5 years, my life has just blown up, and it has been incredible. I'm married for the first time. I just got married 5 months ago. And my life is, I have so many good things. I wasn't obsessed about tonight because I had like 5 other things to be obsessed about. So it's like my OCD and my ADD were kind of balancing each other out. I help a lot of people. I live a really good life today. I'm blown away about how it's all worked out and how it continues to work out. And as I said, I'm not an expert in this program. I don't know every word. I don't know all that, but the program and the book and the steps and going to meetings has saved my life. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. And let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.